From training to performing, join our big league conversation. Welcome to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast with your host, Eric Cressey.
Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 101. We took a little break this summer just to gather our thoughts and get some new content stockpiled, so we're back with our first episode in a few months, and it's really something that's long overdue. This is actually our first major league catcher that we've had on the show. We've had plenty of position players, plenty pitchers. We've got some folks on the catching development side of things, but this is the first guy that's actually going to talk about playing the position at the big league level. I actually learned a ton on this one, and he also shared some really cool insights about just changing positions early in his career and what he did younger, as a multi-sport athlete and all of that to prepare himself for that adjustment later on. So I think this is a really good one that everybody, not just catchers, can benefit from. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the most comprehensive NSF certified for sport daily nutritional supplement I've ever tried. With so many stressors in life, it's difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits and give our bodies the nutrients they need to thrive. As a father of 3 young kids and a co-founder of multiple businesses in multiple states, on top of still being an avid exerciser, I know that busy schedules can really take their toll on us. Whether it's poor sleep, exercise or life stressors, environmental factors, or simply not eating enough of the right foods, we can wind up deficient nutritionally. This is where Athletic Greens can really help. It's a game-changing nutritional insurance policy. They simplify the logistics of getting optimal nutrition on a daily basis by giving you just one thing with all the best things. And that's why I use it daily and recommend it to our athletes. 1 scoop of Athletic Greens contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients, including a multivitamin, multimineral, probiotic, green superfood blend, and more. They work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet, increase energy and focus, aid in digestion, recovery, and supporting of a healthy immune system. This all can happen without taking multiple products. While most nutritional products come to market and stay stagnant, Athletic Greens continues to obsessively improve this one holistic formula based on the latest research, producing 53 improvements over the last decade. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in third-party testing to ensure their customers continue to receive the highest quality and best daily nutritional habit on the planet. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, and contains less than 1 gram of sugar without compromising on taste. They put 75 ingredients through the NSF for Sport certification to come up with a formula that's trusted by some of the world's best athletes, including our own. Right now, Athletic Greens is giving our listeners 10 free travel packets with their subscription. Simply go to athleticgreens.com/Cressey to receive my offer. These travel packs are perfect for supporting your immune system, energy, and gut health when you're traveling for games, training, or simply when you're on the go. They can be a great counterbalance to less than ideal on-the-road food options. So if you want to bridge the gap between deficient and optimal and give yourself the best chance to get nutrient diversity, then head to athleticgreens.com/Cressey and get your 10 free travel packets today. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Cressey, CRESSEY. Today's guest played high school baseball in Texas, where he was a 2-time state champion and tied the Texas high school record with 25 home runs during his senior year. He went on to attend Oral Roberts, where he was initially a third baseman and shortstop before making the transition to catcher. He was named a freshman All-American and played for Team USA's collegiate national team in 2012. Following his junior, he was drafted by the Texas Rangers in 2014, and they converted him to a full-time catcher that fall. In 2016 and 2017, he was awarded the Minor League Baseball Rawlings Gold Glove Award for catchers. He made his MLB debut on June 15, 2018, and is now a fixture with the Rangers Big League Club today. Please welcome to the show, Jose Trevino. Welcome to the show, Jose.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
That's what. So this is long overdue. We are over 100 episodes in, and you are our first catcher, which is something
Nice.
I should have remedied. So no pressure, right?
Yeah, no pressure at all.
You're the Olympic torchbearer for catchers on the podcast.
Yeah.
So I think I've stalked you from afar in terms of like your history, and there's actually a ton of really good stuff here that I'm excited to dig in on. I want to start with you as a high school athlete. So you had a very storied high school career as a 2-time state champion. You hit 25 home runs as a senior that tied the Texas state record. So I'm curious, first off, were you a multi-sport athlete? Were you a baseball guy only? What was your background?
I was a multi-sport athlete. I played football and I played a little bit of basketball. Up until my sophomore year, I was like, man, these guys are getting too tall for me. So I got to get out of here. So I just during basketball season, I would just get ready for baseball,
Mhm.
and then football season. I mean, that would prepare me for baseball too. But yeah, I loved playing football. I loved it.
That's awesome. It's a perfect kind of like fall spring split too, where you kind of
Hmm.
have that winter to gather your thoughts after a long football season. So I'm interested about the tail end of your high school career, where
Hmm.
you wound up at Oral Roberts, obviously, but you hit
Hmm.
25 home runs as a senior. So what was it that did scouts miss you out of high school? Did they see you and you just had a strong commitment? What was it that
Um,
that didn't make pro consideration right out of the gate?
so it was a little mixture of like everything.
Mhm.
Basically what it came down to is what they said was the competition. I wasn't playing enough competition. I was like, man, the baseball down here is really good, but if that's what you say, I guess. And then when I did, so nobody was on me my sophomore. Going to my junior year, there was a couple schools like interested, and then obviously when my senior year hit and I was hitting all those home runs,
Mhm.
that's when I started getting all the letters. But I was already signed and committed to Oral Roberts, and schools were telling me like, "Hey, no, you can. We no, like, no, just come here. Like, it's okay. Like, you can do." And I was like, "No, I'm committed. I signed to these guys. They've been with me the whole time. I'm going to Oral Roberts University." And then that's when the draft started coming into play, and I think it was the Diamondbacks that had called me and were like, "Hey, we're going to take you in the 30th." And I'm like, "There's no need. Like, I'm going to school. I need to develop. Like, I'm not." Me personally, I looked myself in the mirror and was like, hey, like if this is what we want to do, we need to go and spend 3 years at a D1 school against good competition and just get better and then see where we are in 3 years and then go from there.
That's super valuable. I love the idea of loyalty because it's shockingly lacking, unfortunately, in today's college recruiting world. But you made a comment about how you kind of came out of the woodwork between junior and senior year. What was it? Did you find the
Hmm.
weight room as a junior slash senior? Was it a
Oh
swing adjustment?
man,
What was the difference between you as a junior and you as a high
uh,
school senior?
honestly, like I think it was just the mentality of being like, well, I would say it's a mixture. Like it was the weight room. I had a great high school coach. Like he's a legend. He's a legend in South Texas. He's a legend in Texas. And he was kind of like, hey, like he had a son that did it, that played pro ball, and never got to the big leagues. This man coached for like 40 plus years in South Texas high school baseball, and he's been through it. So he was the one like, hey, we need to keep you in the weight room. We need to get you seen. Like we just need to keep you rolling. So I mean, between that and being a student and then playing football too, like we were able to get out and go to a couple showcases in Oklahoma, and that's kind of where I was like, man, like I'd go all over and I'd be like, man, I could play a little bit. Like I'm not overmatched. I'm playing well. And then that's kind of when it kicked in when I was like, I know I said I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, but like I can actually make that happen, and it starts like now. And so ever like he had us in the weight room, like he'd be like, "Hey, we got to go, 6 o'clock weight room, 7:15 chapel." I went to a private Catholic school, so you'd go then 7:15 chapel, and then you go to school, and then you go to your classes from there. But he was on me, man. He was on me, and I think it was a mixture of just like my mentality and finding the weight room and everything just clicking for me.
It's funny. They talk about how the brain is very moldable at younger ages. You look at,
Oh
and
yeah,
I have 6-year-old daughters, and my business partner's wife is Mexican, and he is learning Spanish and English simultaneously. His 6-year-old. It's
oh yeah,
incredible because they can pick
yeah,
it up at some age. I think people forget that doesn't go away in the high school years. That you can learn discipline, you can learn work ethic, as long as you have someone that holds you accountable and keeps the standards high. So it sounds like you had a high school coach that did that.
yeah. He crushed it, man. He was on me. Like it was like, hey, like, are you getting your classes? Are you doing this? And like, I now he always told me, he's like, you're gonna thank me one day. You're gonna thank me one day.
Mhm.
And I always, I keep in touch with him. Obviously, I talk to him a lot. But the thing I take pride in the most is like he's coached all these kids for 40 years, and he has one big leaguer. So I take a lot of pride in that. A lot of pride.
One I'm actually really intrigued about. So in kind of preparing my questions and stuff, like, I read an article where you spoke about your dad's impact on you, and the quote
Hmm.
was, you said, "My dad loved baseball. When I say love baseball, it was to the point of obsession. But let me be clear, he never forced me to do it. He
Yeah.
put me around it, and it was awesome. I loved the game and everything around it." And you said, "My mom and dad always taught me life lessons, and the life lessons you get in baseball are the same ones you get in life."
Yep.
And so I'm curious for you is, do you think, was your dad able to deliver those messages at that age? Because what I get a lot of is, "Hey, my kid wants to eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast. I want them to have eggs and vegetables. Can you tell them to do it?" And a lot of times, because I'm Eric, the strength coach, I can deliver that message, but my own kids don't listen to a darn thing I say sometimes. Was it
Yeah.
was it important for you to have that coach that was separate from your parents, or did your dad, was he able to get through to you like that?
No, I mean it was great that my high school coach was there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like everything else. Like, you know, you could be the best at something in the world, and you're telling your kid like, "Hey, like I can teach you how to do this," and he's like, "Nope,
Yep.
like I don't believe you. Like you're a liar. Like you don't want me to get better or something." But then you get somebody else to say it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're right. You know what? That's what my dad was telling me." So I had that moment, I think, a lot quicker than a lot of people in life. I was probably like an eighth grader when that moment happened. And I was like, man, this guy actually knows what he's talking about.
That's awesome.
So it was obviously when I was younger, I was like, he doesn't know anything. Like, let me learn from everybody on TV and all that. But yeah, it was definitely better to have that separation of like, it was almost like an echo. Whatever my dad would say, my high school coach would end up saying, and he'd be like, well, your dad said that, and I'm like, yeah, I know. So
There's some good
yeah,
lessons there. So I use this line. I stole it from Tim Grover, who trained like Kobe and Michael
oh yeah,
Jordan and Dwayne Wade. He said,
oh yeah,
don't wait around for people to tell you something, that teach you something that you already know." And
yep,
I think that happens a lot. Kids wait for a coach to reiterate, something that their
yeah,
parents has already taught them. But I think the other lesson there is, it's crucial for parents and coaches to be on the same page, right? Because
mhm,
if you have a coach
mhm,
that is very patient and has a very teacher mindset and is very process as opposed to outcome
yep,
driven, and you have a parent that's going to ream a kid out in the car on the ride home from the field because something didn't go the way that it should have, like, those are inherently conflicting. So I always tell parents, make sure
yeah.
you communicate with coaches and define expectations and processes and all that.
Yeah, 1,000%. I never got. I'm not gonna say I never got wrung out by my dad, but it was always like informational. Like
Yeah.
it was always like a situation in the game. It
Yep.
was always like, hey man, like when you had runners at second and third there, and you had one out, all you had to do was hit a ground ball, like little stuff like that.
Yep.
Like it was always like really situational, like really really situational stuff where I was like, oh, he's right. Like I could have just done that, and that's how
Yeah.
that's how I learned.
I think it's making sure there are never mixed messages, right? You want everybody kind of pulling on
Yeah.
the same rope, and when you start hearing parents and coaches saying different things about what the process entails or how it has to be done, it can get really confusing. Kids get a lot of voices in their
Oh,
head.
for sure.
Nice.
Especially as a young kid. Yeah.
Oh, you're not kidding. So speaking of young kids, you head to college as a shortstop and third baseman who happened to catch, right? So I looked back at
Yep.
your numbers. 2012, as a freshman, you didn't catch a single game, and you were an All
Hmm.
American with a 931 OPS and 13 homers. You made Team USA,
Hmm.
and then in 2013, you go back. You make the switch to
Hmm.
being predominantly a catcher. You get 47 games catching. You hit 8 homers and a 733 OPS. So, like, the
Hmm.
first thing I thought of was, like, I don't know, it's probably 15 years ago. The Boston media was like wearing out Jason Varitek for a lack of offense. And I remember distinctly, like, several members of the Red Sox pitching staff like came to his defense. Were like, "Do you know how much he does for us? Do you know how hard it
Yeah.
is to be a major league catcher?" So I'm curious for you, was that just like classic sophomore slump where maybe pitchers in your conferences figured out how to pitch to you, or was it a function of you having to learn so many different things as a catcher that you were exhausted trying to get your reps in? Like, or maybe it was something else.
It was that first year was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely a lot because I had never really caught, especially at a high level like that. So I caught one of your clients. I caught Chichi Gonzalez.
Yes.
So going in, and this guy's my sophomore year, his junior. This guy's a first rounder.
Yep.
This guy has everybody watching him. Like one of our games in where were we? Missouri, southeast Missouri, or something like that. It was like snowing. There was like 20 scouts behind us, and this dude was like shoving. but getting back to that, like it was like, man, like I got a bigger responsibility now. Like I control what happens like in the game most of the time. Like I'm in every single play. Like I can't take a play off. The only time I get to take a play off is really when I get in the dugout. But then, I got to watch the pitcher.
Hmm.
So it was a little bit of learning, and then on top of that, I had an ankle injury,
Hmm.
and I was like, I'm going. Like it's my sophomore year, I'm playing. Like
Hmm.
I have to play because I know what next year brings. So I mean, playing a little bit through that, and then obviously like the catching stuff, like it wasn't easy. Like it really wasn't. But it helped me in the long run for sure.
Was it a work capacity thing? Like I use the example with a lot of our athletes. Say, hey, Lance Armstrong was the best cyclist on the planet, and he retired, and he kind of became like a mediocre marathoner. Like he could run them, but he wasn't elite. Is this the work capacity as a catcher that you need to develop to both get in the reps, catch the bullpens, and actually be available for games on top of running the bases, backing up first base? Is it
Uh
different than
huh.
going out and being on your feet at shortstop for 9 innings? Like, was that
Oh,
a
it's
huge
oh, it's
adjustment?
oh
Yeah.
man, it's 100% different. There's so many little responsibilities that you don't know that come with the position.
Hmm.
I mean, from telling the pitcher to get over to telling the pitcher like, "Hey, mix up your looks at second base."
Hmm.
Like from telling the third baseman, "Hey, this guy might bunt," for like, and then calling a pitch, and then being ready for the next pitch. Like if he fouls it off, if he swings late, if he does this, and I was fortunate enough to have a great a pitching coach at Oral Roberts, and we call him Sneds, but he was like unbelievable, and he helped me a ton. Like, and he told me, he's like, man, you're gonna be a catcher. He's like, we need to get you used to this. Like he wasn't. It was crazy because I felt like he wasn't worried. He was worried, obviously, about our college team doing good, but he was like, I need to prepare you for pro ball. Like that's what he would tell me that all the time. He's like, oh, he'd be like, Hose, you're gonna love pro ball, man. You're gonna love pro ball. He's like, I just need to get you ready. Game calling, I need to get you ready. So I mean, like credit to him, but like everything that came with it, it was definitely a lot more than what I thought,
Were you were
for
you
sure.
were you calling games by the time you left college as well? You were doing them on your own.
At the end, at the tail end of it, my junior year, yeah, I was calling some games. I played a little bit my junior year. Played a little bit of catcher. We needed a shortstop, so they were like, "Hey, we need you at short." I was like, "All right, let's go. It's not going to be pretty, but I'm going to do it."
Do you how many guys? I mean, obviously now in the big leagues, when you talk to other big league catchers and interact in the off season and stuff like that, how many of those guys actually
hmm
called games before they got to pro ball? Is it pretty rare?
Uh, I think now it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
I think because like, and I say this with all due respect to all college coaches, but like they want more control over
Yeah.
their program. I guess what you'd say. So like they want to call it pitches, which
Yeah.
is fine. But I think there's guys that are an exception.
Hmm.
I feel like high draft guys. I feel like they're calling their own games like at some point
Yeah.
because that's what scouts want to see too. They want to see how they're calling their games.
Hmm. So you were drafted kind of as a multi-position guy in
hmm
14, and by that fall, they switched you to catching full time. They obviously saw what your college coaches saw, and you were named the best
Yeah.
defensive catcher in the Rangers minor league system by 2017. So I'm curious, as you
hmm
made this adjustment, you were all in on catching. What was the hardest adjustment to make as you went to catching
Oh.
full time? Was it skill development, managing all the competing demands, game calling, relationships?
Oh,
What
you
was it?
name it, Eric.
It was all
You
hard.
name it. Oh my gosh, it was the hardest thing to do. I didn't even know that they were gonna put me at catcher. Like I was like, oh man, I'm a third baseman, second baseman. Let's go. Like I'm ready. And then I get to Spokane, Washington, and there's a bag full of equipment, a heavy bag. And I'm like, hey, I think someone left their bag. And the catching coach was like, no, that's yours. You got gloves? And I'm like, yeah, infield gloves. And he's like, no, 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 catching gloves. And I'm like, no. He's like, okay, call your agent, tell him to overnight two of them. You can use mine today. I'll see you outside in like 20 minutes. We're gonna do some receiving. And I was like, what? This was within the first 2 days, 3 days. And
That's
then Eric, I'm gonna tell you, I'll be honest with you, I was terrible. I was a terrible short season catcher. Like, I mean, let's put it this way. I got to know the people in the front row at Spokane, Washington, because I was always going back there to get the ball.
well. Here's my question. You're going to be hard on yourself, and I respect that. It's like self-deprecating humor, but like, you and I have both been to short season games. Like there was a time when you would see guys throwing balls into the stands during pregame catch. Like granted, minor league baseball has been a little bit more compacted now. So some of those crazy arms are, they're not getting to affiliates and they're doing that at complexes. But like, how much of that was you versus guys that were legitimately throwing like 55-foot changeups?
Yeah. I mean, some of it was that, but then like came the blocking stuff. Like I had trouble blocking. I was the worst blocker. I'm telling you, like after that season, I was like, man, I'm not going to do that again. That's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and they had told me, they're like, hey, we're going to make you a full-time catcher after the first half of the short season. And I was like, dang, man, am I ready for that? Like, and I just rolled with it that last half of it. And I was like, all right, let's see where we're at. And then in the off season, we'll reassess and we'll go from there. And I mean, I remember sitting in like a dark room and being like asking myself, like, hey, do you want to be a big leaguer? Like, this is the position that's going to get you to the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either you can either, sink or swim at that point. I was like, all right, you can either get better or you can stay the same and you can find another job. What do you want to do? Like, literally, I remember sitting in a dark room just being like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And I put a plan together and I was like, I'm going to block every day. I'm going to receive balls every day. I'm going to do everything every single day, because if I want to get better, like gradually, if I do something over time, I'm going to get better at it. So that's literally what I did. Like, I was like, I had blocking drills. I mean, I had all these blocking drills where I was like, you know what? Like, this is what I'm going to do every day, whether it's a warm up, whether it's getting ready to block or anything like that. I'm doing it. Like, I don't care what anybody says.
And that's
I'm doing it every day.
And that's a lot more miserable than just taking extra hacks in the cage. Like you're rolling around in the dirt getting things thrown at you.
Yep.
So one of the points you made earlier was that you were a multi-sport guy, 3 sports up your sophomore year and 2 sports all the way through. Obviously when you go from being a shortstop and a third baseman to exclusively a catcher, like there are a lot more positions and postures. There's it's variability that a lot of people aren't, really equipped for. And I talk a lot with our young athletes is that playing multiple sports, having a diverse strength and conditioning experience at a young age, it builds the foundation much more broad. And what that allows you to do is you can layer more specific skills on top of it. Whereas when you flip that thing upside down, when you train very specifically in your younger years, you don't have as much adjustability later. Do you feel like those years playing football, those years at shortstop and third, when the time came to actually decide I'm a catcher, like did all of that kind of know-how in terms of comprehensive movement strategies, did it help you? Do you feel like it made a difference?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Because the first thing I thought of when they moved me to catcher was like, man, I'm just going to be back there catching balls. And then all of a sudden, you see guys picking balls and throwing sidearm and going out to field bunts and doing it's the same thing as like a shortstop.
Yeah.
And then to reverse that, like now you have equipment on. Now it's like the football version. You're going to get contact at home plate. You're going to get foul balls. You're going to get your butt kicked. Like you're going to have a foul tip off the inside of your leg, and then you're going to have one off your toe. Like you got to be tough. You got to roll through it. So like all these little things leading up to the final transition of being like, hey, you're a catcher now. Like I feel like it all helped, and like the knowledge of the game. Like I even go back to what I said earlier. Like my dad like telling me situations like that. Like all of that like build up into one thing, and was like, you're going to be a catcher and you're meant to be a catcher. Like, let's do it. So I obviously, I think it all helped for sure. All the way from not being a catcher to doing some catching things and then being a full-time catcher, it for sure helped.
I remember a conversation with an Olympic bobsledder like 10 years ago. And he commented on how when they go, nobody picks bobsled as their first sport, right? Usually they were elite track athlete or football player or something like that. And one of the things that he said surprised me. He said, they actually prefer football players over track athletes. I'm like, well, you think track athletes, like they're fast, they're explosive, like, it's run and push. And he made a comment. He's like, yeah, but the football players are used to getting run into. And you basically put your head between your knees inside a bobsled as it goes a million miles an hour and you're getting rattled all over the place. A lot of the track and field guys, like they aren't equipped for that kind of contact. And you and I both know you're going to get 3 or 4 foul balls off your face mask, your shoulder, you name it, every week. And there's an awareness of knowing whether you're hurt or whether you're just a little dinged up and you can roll with it.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So building on that, you've obviously gone to a much more specific role where you're stuck in a crouching position for hours each week. As you've gotten away from being, a shortstop, third baseman, multi-sport guy, have you had to go out of your way with your prep work, your off-season conditioning, all that stuff
to kind of stay athletic? Can the hours in that crouching position and maybe some of the minimized variability that you don't get from, going back on balls over your shoulder at third base, or, cutting off balls in the hole, like, does it take away athleticism, or do you feel like, there's enough variety at the catching position that you don't have to consciously go out of your way to account for that?
I feel like there's plenty at the catching position. Like I think it's a lot more than what people think, especially nowadays. Like, you have to block, you have to get up, you have to throw the ball. Like it's almost like the same thing. Like I feel like, if not more, because now like you're not waiting for that one ground ball. Every time it happens, the ball's coming to you every single time, and you're either catching it, blocking it, throwing it, or it's getting hit, and you got to direct traffic. So like it's not crazy amount of going out of your way, but there's definitely some things that can help. I would say stay athletic by moving around, taking grounders, shagging pop fly, just moving around. Because you could just get stuck and be like, hey, I'm just a catcher, I'm not doing anything else. But nobody really wants to do that.
I think that maybe like leads to a good question. I'm kind of jumping around on the notes I had for myself, but maybe, in season, what's a day at the ballpark look like for you when you're, starting for a 7:00 game?
Okay. Let me take you through. Okay, so I do my scouting reports in the hotel. So I wake up, I read, I journal, breakfast, and while I'm having breakfast, I'm doing my scouting reports. I look at if there's anything somebody's doing new, and this is scouting reports for our pitcher. So I'm looking at guys if they're doing anything new, what they're doing, how they're swinging, are they hot, like what are they swinging and missing, all that kind of stuff. And then you go from there. You roll into the bus, get to the field about like 1:30ish, 1:00 now. And once you get there, it's like go time. Every first series, the catcher for us, every first game of the series, the catchers, we go out there and we do what we need to work on, whether it's blocking, receiving, throwing, pop ups, plays at the plate, bunts. It could be all types of things. Maybe it's just like a little chit chat every now and then. But for the most part, we're doing something. So that's around like 2:15. And after that, I just try to keep moving. I like to do something. I try to do something every day, to where it's like a kettlebell circuit, mixed with some sprints, mixed with some running, earthing, like all that kind of stuff before. And then after that, you just get ready. You take your cuts in the cages. You go through your routine. That's around like 3:00, 3:30ish. And then you get ready for the hitters meeting. And then after that, you go in a stretch, and then BP. Usually, if you're starting that game, you hit in the first group of BP. And then once you get off the field, you go meet with the pitcher. You put a game plan together of what we're going to do. And then from there, you hope the game plan goes as according, but if it doesn't, you got to make your adjustments on the fly. So, and then pregame routine around 6:25ish to like 6:34ish. I'm getting technical on you.
That's
but
I love
definitely
that.
out there. Yeah, and just playing catch, and then being ready for your pitcher whenever he's ready to get off the mound.
Absolutely. And then what about post game? Obviously, things get crazy. Are you guys? Do you do your lifts post game? Do you pick a couple days a week when you'll get them in, or how do you attack that?
No post game for me. I'm either icing or Normatec. It's a lot of maintenance after the game. Whether it's stuff for your legs, stuff for your upper body. I just recently made the best purchase ever. So if there's any minor leaguers or high schoolers out there, like instead of buying like an Xbox or a PS5, like I suggest buying a Normatec. Like invest in yourself, take care of your body, and you can do it in your room. Like sometimes if I'm just I'm done at the field, I'm like, you know what, I'll just come home and I'll sit and I'll do my Normatec on the bed in the hotel or at home. And that's a type of recovery. But yeah, that's pretty much a day. A day in my eyes. I mean, that's and if I feel like there's anything that needs to be off my mind or off my chest, like I'll journal about it that night. But for the most part, I sleep on it and I write about it in the morning.
Do you I know you kind of split time right now. Do you, when your days are off, do you try to make them fully off? You know what I mean?
No.
Do you try to go high low model? Or you're still, you'll get a lift in on a day when you don't catch?
Oh yeah, for sure. I try to get a lift in. I try to stick with those pitchers, man. You build a bond with those pitchers.
Yeah.
Like my biggest thing is like I want to get to know them more off the field than on the field. I know everything about them on the field. Like I know what they like to do. I know their tendencies. I know what they feel comfortable with. I know what they don't feel comfortable with. Stuff like that. But like I want to get to know them off the field. So whenever I do have the time off, whenever me and Jonah are splitting time, it's like, okay, let me talk to the pitchers, man. Just see what's up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how they feeling, how they doing. Is there anything they're recently working on the bullpens that me and Jonah haven't, have seen? Is there anything we need to know about that they're going to take into the game?
Mm-hmm.
And little things like that. I mean, for me, I try not to just sit there and be like, "Oh, this is a complete off day." Like, no, I'm like, yeah, we're in the big leagues. Yeah, you're here, and that's great. It's hard to get here, and it's even harder to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's every day. Obviously, I'm not going to go, take 2,000 swings every day, but I'm going to get some quality work in.
Yeah.
Whether it's at bats, whether it's tracking, or even on the defensive side. I'm going to catch some flat grounds. I'm going to catch a bullpen. If I feel like I need to, that kind of stuff.
I love that. So
Hmm.
I'm curious, you did make a switch to start to use like the one needed down approach as it's become more
Yeah.
and more popular in baseball. When did you start using it? And, did you have kind of like a learning curve on that? Were there any struggles with that adjustment?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. With everything, man. With
Yeah.
everything I do, it seems like you got to learn from it, and then you roll with it. So my first year using it was last year. I kind of had dipped into it a little bit. Bobby Wilson, Hector Ortiz, and it was kind of going around where everybody's like, "Hey, man, the strike percentage." I don't want to get too into detail, but like strike percentages are going up to
Mhm.
still pitches. They're ranking catchers on how they're framing. We feel like you can do this. It can help you. It's easier to block. And I was like, man, you know what? Like, all right, I'm just gonna try it. Like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna go into a game and I'm gonna do it. It doesn't matter if I fail because I'm going to learn from it and then
Mhm.
I'm just going to get better at it. So I took it into a game last year. I loved it. And then this offseason, obviously, that's where the learning curve was, where I was kind of getting my butt kicked a little bit. Had to switch up, different stances, right knee down, left knee
Yeah.
down, and just how to work those angles and how to get to pitches in certain areas, because you're in a vulnerable position, obviously,
Mhm.
but like this is where it comes in. Like if you think about it, it's just like a shortstop coming through a baseball.
Mhm.
It's you have to be athletic. You have to be able to move. You have to be able to use your feet. I mean, we really dug into this. Like
Mhm.
me and Bobby and Alex Berg was there with me helping out, but it was a lot of digging and being like, okay, like, do I feel comfortable in this position? Do I feel comfortable in this position? Can I block in this position? Can I throw in this position? Am I tipping in this position? Am I giving
Mhm.
it away with like my stance? It was a lot of that
Yeah.
stuff,
I
and
think
we
there's
got to a point.
that's a
We
really
got to a
important
point
lesson.
where it was
Like you're a big
it,
leaguer
it
who wasn't
was
afraid to fail. Like I think that's really
yeah.
overlooked in all this. Is so it sounds terrible to say, but like sometimes development doesn't really happen at the big leagues. Like it happens in the minor leagues, and guys are who they are once they get to the big leagues. I respect this a lot that you were that open to doing it.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, like it was gonna help. It was gonna help the pitchers. It was gonna help me. And then, I mean, like it was obviously like it wasn't great,
Mhm.
but like for me to learn and see like through whether it was a bad experience or a good experience, I I gained something from it. I gained some kind of knowledge. I gained some kind of feeling,
Mhm.
some kind of understanding of what my body needed to do in like a game like situation. So for me, it was like I wasn't really. I didn't want it to be any. I didn't want it to get like. Let me. How am I trying to say this? I didn't want it to get any. I wanted it to get easier, but I wanted to learn from it. So in order for me to do that, I had to do it. Like I just had to just jump in and do it. And ever
Absolutely.
since then, I've loved it.
Now, do you find? I know one of the reports a lot of catchers have is that it is less physically taxing. Like it doesn't beat you up as much as a traditional stance does. Has that been your experience?
Oh, Eric, like it is 1,000% true. Like my legs haven't felt this good since I was playing in the infield.
Hmm.
But it's a lot of different positions. It's a lot of angles that you're in. So, you got to be able to be flexible. You got to be
Yep.
able to move. You got to be able to know how to use your feet to push and block, and use your shin guards. Like, it all comes into it, man. But yeah, like, I definitely feel way better, especially after games.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man, like, it's not as taxing as it used to be.
And I know one of the biggest criticisms of it is that you can't block, you can't throw in this position, and when
Hmm.
you talk to people who are in the know who are really teaching at a higher level, like once you
Hmm.
get good at it, you can do all those things just as well. Has that been your experience? Is that it hasn't taken away from any of that for you?
No, if anything, I think it's gotten better for
Yeah.
me. Like, I really and truly think like it's gotten better for me. Obviously, in the beginning, when there's a runner on third and you got two strikes on a hitter and you're
Yep.
asking your pitcher to bounce a ball, it's a little nerve wracking. But
Yep.
once you do it and you get that feeling, like, but that's the thing that I was talking about earlier was like, you just got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you fail, you learn from it. Like, sometimes our biggest failures are lessons that need to be learned, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's plain and simple. So, like, if something were to go down, something bad were to happen, okay, next time I'll be ready for it.
I love it. Well, we talked a bunch about like the in-season dynamic. I want to talk maybe just a little bit of off-season stuff. So I'm curious, like, what does
Hmm.
your off-season look like? Like, are you banged up when early October rolls around and you need like a little break from it, or do you like to get right back into particularly the catching aspect of
Man,
it? Yeah.
what I've learned is like the more time I take off, the longer it takes me to get rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to start hitting December 1.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I'm not lifting until late October, like my body won't be ready to be swinging at the cuts that I want to take
Mm-hmm.
in December. So for me, I take a week off.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a week off. So like this year, like I mean, I'm planning ahead, but October 3rd is could be our last game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'll take a week off and then I'll get rolling. I'll get rolling on that Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be full on crazy lifts like anything like that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be movement.
Yep.
Get your body movement, get your body ready, and get your body ready to move some weight around. Get some lifts in, run, and do that kind of stuff. So for me, like the first couple weeks is just movement stuff,
Yep.
getting back into shape, getting back into off season shape. Because for me, I feel like obviously in the season, there's a lot of stuff you don't do that you'll do in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
So like squatting, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff, like getting into real weight, like
Mm-hmm.
you're not ready for that until you prep your body for it.
Yep.
So for me, it's like I take that week, hang out with family, hang out with my son, my girlfriend. We do whatever, and then for 2 weeks, I'll just get ready, basically get oiled up and get ready to start lifting some weight.
Nice. And then what about the actual like receiving aspect of it? What I loved, you came and hung out for a couple days in Palm Beach Gardens last offseason, and you were like,
Hmm.
I'll catch anybody you need me to catch. And I'm like, it's like music to any private sector guy's ears. You can never find enough catchers. But I'm curious, like,
Yeah.
is that you? Like, do you want to get a million reps in the offseason? Will you do machine based? Or is it kind of there and spring training is enough time for you?
No, like I love to get the reps, man. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to get better at something.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's underlooked is like a lot of people will just be like, "Ah, I'm good." Like, nah, I don't need that many. But like for me, I'm like, hey, like let me get my eyes on this guy. Let me see if there's anything I can do to, whether to help him, or me just getting reps. Like I love it. Like I love to catch bullpens. I feel like that's where you get your best work in. But for me, it's like I need the reps. Like I want to get the reps. I want to get better. The more pitches you catch, the better you get at receiving. It's plain and simple. The more work you do, the better you're gonna get.
I love that. All right, so I got another question on the athleticism side of things. So I actually read an interview where you said last year that you made some adjustments and you went back to being a rhythm hitter, and it was something that
Hmm.
made a big difference for you. Like, can you elaborate on what you meant by that, and maybe how it relates to the success you've had?
Yeah, I mean it's just feeling rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like dancing. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, for me, you can't just stay there. You gotta have some kind of movement. And whether like I mean, talking to some guys, like some guys feel like they're moving and they're still.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys feel like they're still and they're moving. So it's all about your perspective. Like if you feel like you need rhythm, you got to have some rhythm. You got to have some timing with it. For me, it was just moving with the pitcher, dancing with the pitcher, like making sure I'm not making a sudden move, at something that's coming 95, with sink or with cut. Like not just making like a crazy move to it, like actually having some rhythm, being able to give yourself some time and see it and then roll through that.
I love it. All right, so at the end of each podcast, we always do like a little bit of a lightning round, and we've hit a million different
Okay.
topics. So these are going to build on them. So I'm curious, and actually, this is great feedback. I actually texted some of our minor league catchers, and I was like, "Hey, I'm interviewing Jose. What do you got?" And Mike Rothenberg, who was just drafted out of Duke. You met Mike, I think.
Nice. I did.
Yep, he's in the Tigers organization. So what's up, Roth? But he's like, what's his favorite catching drill? Like, is there a go-to one that has made a big difference for you?
It's read and react with one knee on the ground. It's either you're blocking or receiving. Those are my favorite ones.
Okay. All right. So next one, favorite catcher to watch and why? Who do you like to see? We always ask the pitchers, and we get some good responses. So I'm sure there are guys that you see that are just unreal.
Yeah, I mean, one of our guys, Jonah Heim. I mean, he's legit, man. We've been getting after it all year. It's been fun to watch him. Roberto Perez was one of my favorites, honestly.
Great blocker.
Like, yeah, and like great receiver. Like he does a good job with his pitchers. Man, but the all time love to watch. Like love to get after. I mean, Yachty. Like Yachty's. That's a good one. I think that's every catcher where they're like, man, that guy's good, man. That guy can do it.
I feel like when I ask this question of pitchers, they always say Kershaw and Scherzer. So Yachty is the catcher of that conversation.
Yeah,
makes
for
sense.
Sure.
What about like your best advice to any young catcher? Like, is there a hierarchy in place? Like, you need to learn this before you learn this, or like where would you start if you were talking to a 16-year-old that's listening to this?
Man, I mean the way I started, like it's a tough job. Like there's no doubt. Like you got all these things going on, but if I had to give one piece of advice, like it's like know you're there for someone else.
Yeah.
Like know you're there for the guy on the mound, and that's it. Like you're there for a better reason. Like, it's not about you. It's about taking care of that guy on the mound. It's about being there for him. Like I might get some crap for this, but like pitchers they can get a little emotional. They have good outings, they have bad outings, they have okay outings, they have their best stuff, they have their worst stuff. You have to be there for them. They just come off a bad inning, they have just come off a good inning. You have to be there for them. And just talk to them. But for the most part, for me, it's take care of your pitchers.
That's awesome.
Take care of them. Like get to know them. Take care of them.
That's servant leadership. And to be honest, that's I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same way. I think that's why so many retired catchers become managers. You look at guys like David Ross and Mike Matheny, and I think them, and also like utility players. Obviously you see a lot of those guys that are willing to do anything to help anyone. And you think about it though, for the most part, if we look at pretty much every athlete on a baseball field, aside from a catcher, their success is heavily predicated on being selfish, right? They have to eat when they want to, train when they want to, sleep when they want to, worry about their at-bats, all that stuff. And a catcher is the one position on that field that's got to serve everybody else. So I think
everybody, man.
It's a huge
everybody.
Lesson. Nice. Yeah. And so last one, best advice to a teenage Jose Trevino. If you could go back in time, what would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Oh my gosh. Enjoy the journey. The destination is set. But just enjoy the journey more. For me, I got way too caught up in the destination. And I didn't enjoy as much as I would have liked to. But obviously I'm enjoying it now, looking back at it, this is advice I'd give anybody. But just enjoy the journey and have fun where you are. Like be where you are. There's no need to think, in the present. There's no need to think about the past. Biggest advice for me would be to be where you are and enjoy the journey. Like,
That's awesome.
That's my thing.
Very good stuff, my man. You have one of the better social media presences in baseball. It's at Hip Hip Jose 5 on both Instagram and Twitter. You're actually really good about interacting with fans and all that. So I'm sure folks will hop on and follow that because there's a lot to be taught with the great work you're doing, man.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it.
This was a pleasure. We're psyched you're able to take time. So thank you very much and best of luck the rest of the season.
Appreciate it, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you'd consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review to read on iTunes. We welcome your suggestions for future guests and questions. Just email elitebaseballpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll see you next episode.